Why does the eye see a thing more clearly in dreams than the imagination when awake? The greatest deception men suffer is from their own opinions. You can have no dominion greater or less than that over yourself. As every divided kingdom falls, so every mind divided between many studies confounds and saps itself. Nothing strengthens authority so much as silence. Water is the driving force of all nature. Learning never exhausts the mind. Tears come from the heart and not from the brain. I love those who can smile in trouble, who can gather strength from distress, and grow brave by reflection. 'Tis the business of little minds to shrink, but they whose heart is firm, and whose conscience approves their conduct, will pursue their principles unto death. The noblest pleasure is the joy of understanding. For once you have tasted flight, you will walk the earth with your eyes turned skywards, for there you have been and there you will long to return. While I thought that I was learning how to live, I have been learning how to die. The natural desire of good men is knowledge. It had long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things. In rivers, the water that you touch is the last of what has passed and the first of that which comes, so with present time. The beginnings and ends of shadow lie between the light and darkness and may be infinitely diminished and infinitely increased. Shadow is the means by which bodies display their form. The forms of bodies could not be understood in detail but for shadow. I have found that, in the composition of the human body as compared with the bodies of animals, the organs of sense are duller and coarser. Thus, it is composed of less ingenious instruments, and of spaces less capacious for receiving the faculties of sense. Experience never errs. It is only your judgments that err by promising themselves effects such as are not caused by your experiments. Iron rusts from disuse, water loses its purity from stagnation, even so does inaction sap the vigor of the mind. I have been impressed with the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Being willing is not enough, we must do. Blinding ignorance does mislead us. Oh! Wretched mortals, open your eyes. Medicine is the restoration of discordant elements. Sickness is the discord of the elements infused into the living body. The length of a man's outspread arms is equal to his height. The human bird shall take his first flight, filling the world with amazement, all writings with his fame, and bringing eternal glory to the nest whence he sprang. A beautiful body perishes, but a work of art dies not. Knowledge of the past and of the places of the earth is the ornament and food of the mind of man. Weight, force and casual impulse, together with resistance, are the four external powers in which all the visible actions of mortals have their being and their end. People talk to people who perceive nothing, who have open eyes and see nothing. They shall talk to them and receive no answer. They shall adore those who have ears and hear nothing. They shall burn lamps for those who do not see. He who is fixed to a star does not change his mind. Human subtlety will never devise an invention more beautiful, more simple or more direct than does nature, because in her inventions nothing is lacking, and nothing is superfluous. There are four powers: memory and intellect, desire and covetousness. The two first are mental and the others sensual. The three senses, sight, hearing and smell, cannot well be prevented, touch and taste not at all. Anyone who conducts an argument by appealing to authority is not using his intelligence, he is just using his memory. Painting is concerned with all the 10 attributes of sight, which are darkness, light, solidity and color, form and position, distance and propinquity, motion and rest. There are three classes of people: those who see when they are shown, those who do not see. The human foot is a masterpiece of engineering and a work of art. Our life is made by the death of others. Many are they who have a taste and love for drawing, but no talent, and this will be discernible in boys who are not diligent and never finish their drawings with shading. Where the spirit does not work with the hand, there is no art. He who loves practice without theory is like the sailor who boards ship without a rudder and compass and never knows where he may cast. Time abides long enough for those who make use of it. Time stays long enough for anyone who will use it. All knowledge which ends in words will die as quickly as it came to life, with the exception of the written word, which is its mechanical part. It's easier to resist at the beginning than at the end. The poet ranks far below the painter in the representation of visible things, and far below the musician in that of invisible things. It seems that it had been destined before that I should occupy myself so thoroughly with the vulture, for it comes to my mind as a very early memory. When I was still in the cradle, a vulture came down to me. He opened my mouth with his tail and struck me a few times with his tail against my lips. Nature is the source of all true knowledge. She has her own logic, her own laws. She has no effect without cause nor invention without necessity. 4. Verily, great love springs from great knowledge of the beloved object, and if you little know it, you will be able to love it only little or not at all. The divisions of perspective are three, as used in drawing. Of these, the first includes the diminution in size of opaque objects. The second treats of the diminution and loss of outline in such opaque objects. The third, of the diminution and loss of color at long distances. The painter who draws merely by practice and by eye, without any reason, is like a mirror which copies everything placed in front of it without being conscious of their existence. In order to arrive at knowledge of the motions of birds in the air, it is first necessary to acquire knowledge of the winds, which we will prove by the motions of water in itself, and this knowledge will be a step enabling us to arrive at the knowledge of beings that fly between the air and the wind. Marriage is like putting your hand into a bag of snakes in the hope of pulling out an eel. I have offended God and mankind because my work didn't reach the quality it should have. Just as food eaten without appetite is a tedious nourishment, so does study without zeal damage the memory by not assimilating what it absorbs. Just as courage imperils life, fear protects it. Just as courage is the danger of life, so is fear its safeguard. You do ill if you praise, but worse if you censure, what you do not understand. There is no object so large but that at a great distance from the eye it does not appear smaller than a smaller object near. Science is the captain, and practice the soldiers. As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a life well spent brings happy death. Beyond a doubt truth bears the same relation to falsehood as light to darkness. Every action needs to be prompted by a motive. Where there is shouting, there is no true knowledge. All our knowledge has its origins in our perceptions. Poor is the pupil who does not surpass his master. Although nature commences with reason and ends in experience, it is necessary for us to do the opposite. That is to commence with experience and from this to proceed to investigate the reason. Experience does not err. Only your judgments err by expecting from her what is not in her power. Man and animals are in reality vehicles and conduits of food, tombs of animals, hostels of death, coverings that consume, deriving life by the death of others. The function of muscle is to pull and not to push, except in the case of the genitals and the tongue. I have always felt it is my destiny to build a machine that would allow man to fly. Men of lofty genius when they are doing the least work are most active. Our body is dependent on heaven and heaven on the spirit. Necessity is the mistress and guide of nature. Necessity is the theme and inventress of nature, her curb and her eternal law. The spirit desires to remain with its body, because, without the organic instruments of that body, it can neither act, nor feel anything. It is better to imitate ancient than modern work. Each man is always in the middle of the surface of the earth and under the zenith of his own hemisphere, and over the center of the earth. How many emperors and how many princes have lived and died and no record of them remains, and they only sought to gain dominions and riches in order that their fame might be everlasting. The mind of the painter must resemble a mirror, which always takes the color of the object it reflects and is completely occupied by the images of as many objects as are in front of it. Common sense is that which judges the things given to it by other senses. He who wishes to be rich in a day will be hanged in a year. The senses are of the earth, the reason stands apart from them in contemplation. The painter who is familiar with the nature of the sinews, muscles, and tendons, will know very well, in giving movement to a limb, how many and which sinews cause it, and which muscle, by swelling, causes the contraction of that sinew, and which sinews, expanded into the thinnest cartilage, surround and support the said muscle. The truth of things is the chief nutriment of superior intellects. The eye sees a thing more clearly in dreams than the imagination awake. Obstacles cannot crush me, every obstacle yields to stern resolve. Nothing can be loved or hated unless it is first known. He who does not punish evil commands it to be done. Just as eating contrary to the inclination is injurious to the health, so study without desire sports the memory, and it retains nothing that it takes in. Iron rusts from disuse, water loses its purity from stagnation, even so does inaction sap the vigor of the mind. Iron rusts from disuse, stagnant water loses its purity and in cold weather becomes frozen, even so does inaction sap the vigors of the mind. Iron rusts from disuse, stagnant water loses its purity, and in cold weather becomes frozen, even so does inaction sap the vigors of the mind. You do ill to praise, but worse to censure, what you do not understand. Thou, O God, dost sell us all good things at the price of labor. Time stays long enough for those who use it. When once you have tasted flight, you will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward, for there you have been, and there you will always long to return. Experience does not ever err. It is only your judgment that errs in promising itself results which are not caused by your experiments. There shall be wings. If the accomplishment be not for me, 'tis for some other. The most praiseworthy form of painting is one that most resembles what it imitates. No member needs so great a number of muscles as the tongue, this exceeds all the rest in the number of its movements. The Medici created and destroyed me. Study the science of art and the art of science. I would venture to affirm that a man cannot attain excellence if he satisfy the ignorant and not those of his own craft, and if he be not singular, or distant, or whatever you like to call him. My works are the issue of simple and plain experience, which is the true mistress. Do not imitate one another's style. If you do, so far as your art is concerned, you will be called a grandson, rather than the son of nature. No one should ever imitate the style of another because, with regard to art, he will be called a nephew and not a child of nature. O painter, take care lest the greed for gain prove a stronger incentive than renown in art, for to gain this renown is a far greater thing than is the renown of riches. A gray day provides the best light. The light for drawing from nature should come from the north in order that it may not vary. And if you have it from the south, keep the window screened with cloth, so that with the sun shining the whole day the light may not vary. The height of the light so arranged as that every object shall cast a shadow on the ground of the same length as itself. The vivacity and brightness of colors in a landscape will never bear any comparison with a landscape in nature when it is illumined by the sun, unless the painting is placed in such a position that it will receive the same light from the sun as does the landscape. Shadows which you see with difficulty, and whose boundaries you cannot define, these you should not represent as finished or sharply defined, for the result would be that your work would seem wooden. Surely when a man is painting a picture he ought not refuse to hear any man's opinion. Since men are able to form a true judgment as to the works of nature, how much more does it behoove us to admit that they are able to judge our faults? The mind of a painter should be like a mirror which is filled with as many images as there are things placed before him. We know well that mistakes are more easily detected in the works of others than in one's own. The great man presides over all his states of consciousness with obstinate rigor. Let no man who is not a mathematician read the elements of my work. Be eager to lend a patient ear to the opinions of others and think long and hard whether whoever finds fault has reason or not to censure you. And if the answer is yes, correct the fault. If no, give the impression that you have not heard him, or if he is a man whom you respect, explain to him why he is mistaken. It should not be hard for you to stop sometimes and look into the stains of walls, or ashes of a fire, or clouds, or mud or like places, in which, you, may find really marvelous ideas. To me it seems that those sciences are vain and full of error which are not born of experience, mother of all certainty, first-hand experience which in its origins, or means, or end has passed through one of the five senses. No human investigation can claim to be scientific if it doesn't pass the test of mathematical proof. The human being, creature of eyes, needs the image. Black is like a broken vessel, which is deprived of the capacity to contain anything. Instrumental or mechanical science is the noblest and above all others, the most useful. Sculptured figures which appear in motion, will, in their standing position, actually look as if they were falling forward. The painter must be solitary. For if you are alone you are completely yourself, but if you are accompanied by a single companion, you are only half yourself. A painter was asked why, since he made such beautiful figures, which were but dead things, his children were so ugly, to which the painter replied that he made his pictures by day, and his children by night. Happy will be those who give ear to the words of the dead, the reading of good works and the observing of their precepts. Things severed shall be united and shall acquire of themselves such virtue that they shall restore to men their lost memory. That is the papyrus sheets, which are formed out of several strips and preserve the memory of the thoughts and deeds of men. To any white body receiving the light from the sun, or the air, the shadows will be of a bluish cast. In an atmosphere of uniform density the most distant things seen through it, such as the mountains, in consequence of the great quantity of atmosphere which is between your eye and them, will appear blue. Therefore you should make the building, wall which is more distant less defined and bluer, 5 times as far away, make 5 times as blue. It reflects no great honor on a painter to be able to execute one thing well. He who despises painting has no love for the philosophy in nature. If anyone wishes to see how the soul dwells in its body, let him observe how this body uses its daily habitation, that is to say, if this is devoid of order and confused, the body will be kept in disorder and confusion by its soul. Poetry is superior to painting in the presentation of words, and painting is superior to poetry in the presentation of facts. For this reason I judge painting to be superior to poetry. We should not desire the impossible. The imagination is to the effect as the shadow to the opaque body which causes the shadow. Such is the supreme folly of man that he labors so as to labor no more. A long life is a life well spent. If the thing loved is base, the lover becomes base. Lust is the cause of generation. Nature appears to have been the cruel stepmother rather than the mother of many animals. The soul can never be corrupted with the corruption of the body, but it is like the wind which causes the sound of the organ, and which ceases to produce a good effect when a pipe is spoilt. Slender certainty is better than portentous falsehood. There is no doubt that truth is to falsehood as light is to darkness, and so excellent a thing is truth that even when it touches humble and lowly matters, it still incomparably exceeds the uncertainty and falsehood in which great and elevated discourses are clothed, because even if falsehood be the fifth element of our minds, notwithstanding this, truth is the supreme nourishment of the higher intellects. Shadow is the obstruction of light. Shadows appear to me to be of supreme importance in perspective, because, without them opaque and solid bodies will be ill-defined. That which is contained within their outlines and their boundaries themselves will be ill understood unless they are shown against a background of a different tone from themselves. Virtue is our true wealth and the true reward of its possessor. It cannot be lost, it never deserts us until life leaves us. The fame of the rich man dies with him, the fame of the treasure, and not of the man who possessed it, remains. For youth, everything is sport. Every loss which we incur leaves behind it vexation in the memory, save the greatest loss of all, that is, death, which annihilates the memory, together with life. A natural action is accomplished in the briefest manner. I know very well that because I am unlettered some presumptuous people will think they have the right to criticize me, saying that I am an uncultured man. What stupid fools! Do they not know that I could reply to them as Marius did to the Roman patricians? Do those who pride themselves on the works of other men claim to challenge mine? He only moves toward the perfection of his art whose criticism surpasses his achievement. Perspective is to painting what the bridle is to the horse, the rudder to a ship. Although the poet has as wide a choice of subjects as the painter, his creations fail to afford as much satisfaction to mankind as do paintings. If the poet serves the understanding by way of the ear, the painter does so by the eye, which is the nobler sense. Practice should always be based upon a sound knowledge of theory. The soul is content to stay imprisoned in the human body, for through the eyes all the various things of nature are represented to the soul. The instant the atmosphere is illuminated it will be filled with an infinite number of images which are produced by the various bodies and colors assembled in it. And the eye is the target, a lodestone, of these images. The lover is drawn by the thing loved, as the sense is by that which it perceives. Painting embraces and contains within itself all the things which nature produces or which results from the fortuitous actions of men. He is but a poor master who makes only a single figure well. The painter or draftsman ought to be solitary, in order that the well-being of the body not sap the vigor of the mind. If you are alone, you belong entirely to yourself. All the bystanders at an event worthy of note adopt various gestures of admiration when contemplating the occurrence. Why seek to embarrass the artist with vanities foreign to his quietness? Know you not that certain sciences require the whole man, leaving no part of him at leisure for your trifles? Men and words are ready-made, and you, O painter, if you do not know how to make your figures move, are like an orator who knows not how to use his words. In her, nature's, inventions nothing is lacking and nothing is superfluous. Nature has placed in the front part of man, as he moves, all those parts which when struck cause him to feel pain, and this is felt in the joints of the legs, the forehead and the nose, and has been so devised for the preservation of man, because if such pain were not felt in these limbs they would be destroyed by the many blows they receive. As you cannot do what you want what you can do. Of several bodies all equally larger and distant, that most brightly illuminated will appear to the eye nearest and largest. When the sun is covered by clouds, objects are less conspicuous, because there is little difference between the light and shade of the trees and the buildings being illuminated by the brightness of the atmosphere which surrounds the objects in such a way that the shadows are few, and these few fade away so that their outline is lost in haze. If you are on the side whence the wind is blowing, you will see the trees looking much lighter than you would see them on the other sides, and this is due to the fact that the wind turns up the reverse side of the leaves, which in all trees is much whiter than the upper side. The sun gives spirit and life to the plants, and the earth nourishes them with moisture. Nature is so delightful and abundant in its variations that there would not be one that resembles another, and not only plants as a whole, but among their branches, leaves and fruit, will not be found one which is precisely like another. What induces you, O man, to depart from your home in town, to leave parents and friends, and go to the countryside over mountains and valleys, if it is not for the beauty of the world of nature? Of the four elements, water is the second in weight and the second in respect of mobility. It is never at rest until it unites with the sea. If you throw a stone in a pond, the waves which strike against the shores are thrown back towards the spot where the stone struck, and on meeting other waves they never intercept each other's course. In a small pond one and the same stroke gives birth to many motions of advance and recoil. Weight is caused by one element being situated in another, and it moves by the shortest line towards its center, not by its own choice. Not because the center draws it to itself, but because the other intervening element cannot withstand it. To speak of this subject you must explain the nature of the resistance of the air, in the second the anatomy of the bird and its wings, in the third the method of working the wings in their various movements, in the fourth the power of the wings and the tail when the wings are not being moved and when the wind is favorable to serve as guide in various movements. Once you have tasted the taste of sky, you will forever look up. Many have made a trade of delusions and false miracles, deceiving the stupid multitudes. The acquisition of knowledge is always of use to the intellect, because it may thus drive out useless things and retain the good. For nothing can be loved or hated unless it is first known. Abbreviators do harm to knowledge and to love. Whoever despises the high wisdom of mathematics nourishes himself on delusion and will never still the sophistic sciences whose only product is an eternal uproar. A wave is never found alone, but is mingled with the other waves. All our knowledge has its origins in our perceptions. In nature there is no effect without a cause. Experience never errs. It is only your judgments that err by promising themselves effects such as are not caused by your experiments. Science is the observation of things possible, whether present or past. Prescience is the knowledge of things which may come to pass. People of higher talent work, even if they seem to do nothing. The good painter must paint two things, a person and the essence of his soul. Wood feeds the fire which burns it. We must doubt the certainty of everything which passes through the senses, but how much more ought we to doubt things contrary to the senses, such as the existence of God and the soul. Man has much power of discourse which for the most part is vain and false, animals have but little, but it is useful and true, and a small truth is better than a great lie. The artist sees what others only catch a glimpse of. Those who, in debate, appeal to their qualifications, argue from memory, not from understanding. The mind that engages in subjects of too great variety becomes confused and weakened. The organ of perception acts more readily than judgment. Music may be called the sister of painting, for she is dependent upon hearing. The sense which comes second in her harmony is composed of the union of proportional parts sounded simultaneously, rising and falling in one or more harmonic rhythms. Fire destroys falsehood, that is sophistry, and restores truth, driving out darkness. Constancy does not begin, but is that which perseveres. Nothing will be left, nothing in the air, nothing under the earth, nothing in the waters. All will be exterminated. The wisest and noblest teacher is nature itself. The first object of the painter is to make a flat plane appear as a body in relief and projecting from that plane. When fortune comes, seize her in front with a sure hand, because behind she is bald. Vows begin when hope dies. The painter who draws by practice and judgment of the eye without the use of reason is like the mirror which reproduces within itself all the objects which are set opposite to it without knowledge of the same. He who has access to the fountain does not go to the water pot. The fox, when it sees a flock of herons or magpies or birds of that kind, suddenly flings himself on the ground with his mouth open to look as he were dead, and these birds want to peck at his tongue, and he bites off their heads. The mole has very small eyes and it always lives underground, and it lives as long as it is in the dark, but when it comes into the light it dies immediately, because it becomes known, and so it is with lies. Perspective is the rein and rudder of painting. As regards this vice, we read that the peacock is more guilty of it than any other animal. For it is always contemplating the beauty of its tail, which it spreads in the form of a wheel, and by its cries attracts to itself the gaze of the creatures that surround it. And this is the last vice to be conquered. He who fears dangers will not perish by them. You should look at certain walls stained with damp, or at stones of uneven color. If you have to invent some backgrounds, you will be able to see in these the likeness of divine landscapes, adorned with mountains, ruins, rocks, woods, great plains, hills and valleys in great variety, and expressions of faces and clothes and an infinity of things which you will be able to reduce to their complete and proper forms. In such walls the same thing happens as in the sound of bells, in whose stroke you may find every named word which you can imagine. The motive power is the cause of all life. The memory of benefits is a frail defense against ingratitude. Shadow is the diminution alike of light and of darkness, and stands between darkness and light. Our body is dependent on heaven and heaven on the spirit. The knowledge of the past times and of the places of the earth is both an ornament and nutriment to the human mind. The eye, which sees all objects reversed, retains the images for some time. That which has no limitations, has no form. Nothing is so much to be feared as evil report. Learning acquired in youth arrests the evil of old age. The grave will fall in upon him who digs it. The boundaries of bodies are the least of all things. The eye which turns from a white object in the light of the sun and goes into a less fully lighted place will see everything as dark. The limiting surface of one thing is the beginning of another. Fear arises sooner than anything else. He who wishes to see how the soul inhabits the body should look to see how that body uses its daily surroundings. If the dwelling is dirty and neglected, the body will be kept by its soul in the same condition, dirty and neglected. A man of supreme folly, his life flies away while he is merely hoping to enjoy it. Being engulfed in practice without delicate knowledge related to it, is in many ways like entering a ship without knowing where it is headed. Necessity is a guardian in nature. Who sows virtue ought to reap honor. To lie is vile, to tell truth is excellent, if not noble. The vine that has grown old on an old tree falls with the ruin of that tree, and through that bad companionship must perish with it. To speak ill of a good person is not truly good, all in all. If you put on more clothes as the cold increases, it will have no power to hurt you. Let us hope that. If we make mistakes in our first compositions and do not know them, we may not amend them. O time with your teethy years! You swallow up all things little by little in a slow motion, wrinkling process of dying. Old age takes in part savory wisdom for its food. See to that your old age will not lack in nourishment. We may call painting the grandchild of nature. Anyone who invokes authors in discussion is not using his intelligence but his memory. O speculators about perpetual motion, how many vain chimeras have you created in the like quest? Go and take your place with the seekers after gold. Though I may not be able to quote other authors, I shall rely on that which is much greater and more worthy, on experience. Some promises and time disappoint us. I say that in narrative paintings one should mingle direct contraries close by, because they produce strong contrasts with one another. And all the more so when they are very close together, that is, the ugly next to the beautiful, the big to the small, the old to the young, the strong to the weak. In this way you will vary as much as possible and close by. I think it is no small attraction in a painter to be able to give a pleasing air to his figures, and whoever is not naturally possessed of this grace may acquire it by study. As opportunity offers in the following manner, be on the watch to take good parts of many beautiful faces of which the beautiful parts are established by general repute, rather than by your own judgment, for you may deceive yourself by selecting faces that resemble your own, since it often seems that such similarities please us. So therefore choose the beautiful ones as I tell you and fix them in your mind. Let the painter composing narrative pictures take pleasure in wealth and variety, and avoid repeating any part that occurs in it, so that the uniqueness and abundance attract people to it and delight the eye of the observer. I say that a narrative painting requires, depending on the scene, wherever the eye falls, a mixture of men of diverse appearances, of diverse ages and dress, combined together with women, children, dogs, horses, buildings, fields, and hills. Lying on a feather mattress or quilt will not bring you renown. Make your faces so that they do not all have the same expression, as one sees with most painters, but give them different expression, according to age, complexion, and good or bad character. Every man at 3 years old is half his height. A good memory, which nature has endowed us with, causes things long past to seem present. A life well used procures a happy death. A man was desired to rise from bed because the sun was already up. He replied, "If I had as far to go and as much to do as he has, I should be up by now, but having but a little way to go, I shall not get up yet." Depth and strength of a human character are defined by its moral reserves. Especially learn how to see. It vexes me greatly that having to earn my living has forced me to interrupt the work and to attend to small matters. Let not your rage or malice destroy a life. Man's external form, marvelously constructed, is not much as compared with the divine soul that dwells inside that structure. Many will think they may reasonably blame me by alleging that my proofs are opposed to the authority of certain men held in the highest reverence by their inexperienced judgments, not considering that my works are the issue of pure and simple experience. Every action needs to be prompted by a motive. To know and to will are two operations of the human mind. Discerning, judging, deliberating are acts of the human mind. Fame alone raises herself to heaven, because virtuous things are in favor with God. Everything proceeds from everything else and everything becomes everything, and everything can be turned into everything else. Painting is concerned with the 10 things you can see. These are darkness and brightness, substance and color, form and place, remoteness and nearness, movement and rest. Any color is more distinctly seen when opposed to its contrary, thus, black on white, blear near yellow, green near red, and so on. I abhor the supreme folly of those who blame the disciples of nature in defiance of those masters who were themselves her pupils. I shall do down in history as the man who opened a door. I have been impressed with the urgency of doing. It's not enough that you believe what you see. You must also understand what you see. Not to appreciate life, all of life, is not to deserve it. I am never weary of being useful. In serving others I cannot do enough. No labor is sufficient to tire me. To enjoy, to love a thing for its own sake and for no other reason. Test knowledge through experience, be prepared to make mistakes, and be persistent about it. The painter who has no doubt about his own ability will attain very little. The moment is timeless. All thoughts start from emotions. Life, when is spent well, is long. The Bactrian have 2 humps, the Arabian 1 only. They are swift in battle and most useful to carry burdens. This animal is extremely observant of rule and measure, for it will not move if it has a greater weight than it is used to, and if it is taken too far it does the same, and suddenly stops, and so the merchants are obliged to lodge there. Fire is to represent truth because it destroys all sophistry and lies, and the mask is for lying and falsehood which conceal truth. I am not to blame for putting forward, in the course of my work on science, any general rule derived from a previous conclusion. If you are representing a white body, let it be surrounded by ample space, because as white has no color of its own, it is tinged and altered in some degree by the color of the objects surrounding it. Movement will fail sooner than usefulness. The book of the science of mechanics must precede the book of useful inventions. The motions of men must be such as suggest their dignity or their baseness. The painter strives and competes with nature. The part always has a tendency to reunite with its whole in order to escape from its imperfection. The study of what is excellent is food for the mind and body. The variety of color in objects cannot be discerned at a great distance, excepting in those parts which are directly lighted up by the solar rays. When the thing taken into union is perfectly adapted to that which receives it, the result is delight and pleasure and satisfaction. An artist who lacks the power of self-criticism accomplishes but little. It is good if your work stands higher than your own opinion of it, bad if it is on the same level. But it is a great disaster if your work stands lower than your judgment of it. To be a winner you must want to win but must know of the chance of losing and must not fear of it. Advertisers constantly invent cures to which there is no disease. One can have no more mastery over the environment than one has over himself. Truth is so excellent that if it praises but small things they become noble. Effective gestures pointing to things near either in time or space should be made with the hand not very far from the body of the person pointing. And if these things are distant, the hand of the painter should be more extended and the face turned toward the person to whom he is addressing the demonstration. The bones of the dead will be seen to govern the fortunes of him who moves them. Every part is disposed to unite with the whole, that it may thereby escape from its own incompleteness. Putting your hand into a river, you simultaneously touch the last of what is passing and the first of what is coming. In whatever system where the weight attached to the wheel should be the cause of motion of the wheel, without any doubt the center of the gravity of the weight will stop beneath the center of its axle. No instrument devised by human ingenuity, which turns with its wheel, can remedy this effect. Oh, speculators about perpetual motion, how many vain chimeras have you created in the like quest? Go and take you place with the seekers after gold. Oh! How foul a thing, that we should see the tongue of one animal in the guts of another. Study me, reader, if you delight in me, because on very few occasions shall I return to the world, and because the patience for this profession is found in very few, and only in those who wish to compose things anew. Come, O men, to see the miracles that such studies will disclose to nature. We, by our arts, may be called the grandsons of God. It is easier to contend with evil at the first than at the last. Ask counsel of him who rules himself well. Wherever good fortune enters, envy lays siege to the place and attacks it, and when it departs, sorrow and repentance remain behind. Perspective is nothing more than a rational demonstration applied to the consideration of how objects in front of the eye transmit their image to it, by means of a pyramid of lines. The pyramid is the name I apply to the lines which, starting from the surface and edges of each object, converge from a distance and meet in a single point. Many will be busied in taking away from a thing, which will grow in proportion as it is diminished. I woke up only to find the rest of the world asleep. The greater the man's soul, the deeper he loves. Supreme happiness will be the greatest cause of misery, and the perfection of wisdom the occasion of folly. Everything comes from everything, and everything is made out of everything, and everything returns into everything. Fire destroys all sophistry, that is deceit, and maintains truth alone, that is gold. Things that are separate shall be united and acquire such virtue that they will restore to man his lost memory. Science is the observation of things possible, whether present or past. Prescience is the knowledge of things which may come to pass, though but slowly. Make an effort to collect the good features from many beautiful faces. Experiment is the sole interpreter of the artifices of nature. An infinite number of men will sell publicly and unhindered things of the very highest price, without leave from the master of it, while it never was theirs nor in their power, and human justice will not prevent it. I'm not contented to capture the world. I want to change it. Men standing in opposite hemispheres will converse and deride each other and embrace each other, and understand each other's language. The world wouldn't be the world without trouble. All the elements will be seen mixed together in a great whirling mass, now borne towards the center of the world, now towards the sky, and now furiously rushing from the south towards the frozen north, and sometimes from the east towards the west, and then again from this hemisphere to the other. One shall be born from small beginnings which will rapidly become vast. This will respect no created thing, rather will it, by its power, transform almost everything from its own nature into another. O sleepers! What a thing is slumber! Sleep resembles death. Ah! Why then dost thou not work in such wise as that after death thou mayst retain a resemblance to perfect life, when, during life, thou art in sleep so like to the hapless dead? It reflects no great honor on a painter to be able to execute only one thing well, such as a head, an academy figure, or draperies, animals, landscapes, or the like, in other words, confining himself to some particular object of study. This is so because there is scarcely a person so devoid of genius as to fail of success if he applies himself earnestly to one branch of study and practices it continually. There is no higher or lower knowledge, but one only, flowing out of experimentation. Those who fall in love with practice without science are like a sailor who enters a ship without a helm or a compass, and who never can be certain whither he is going. If you do not rest on the good foundation of nature, you will labor with little honor and less profit. Strive to preserve your health, and in this you will better succeed in proportion as you keep clear of the physicians, for their drugs are a kind of alchemy concerning which there are no fewer books than there are medicines. The evil which does me no harm is like the good which in no wise avails me. Here is a thing which the more you fear and avoid it the nearer you approach to it, and this is misery. The more you flee from it the more miserable and restless you will become. Most men are of not more use in their lives but as machines for turning food into **t. Those who become enamored of the art, without having previously applied to the diligent study of the scientific part of it, may be compared to mariners who put to the sea in a ship without rudder or compass and therefore cannot be certain of arriving at the wished-for port. Of the horse I will say nothing because I know the times. Ogni nostra cognition pra scipia decentuma ti. All our knowledge has its origin in our perceptions. Your brain is much better than you think, just use it. O mighty and once living instrument of formative nature! Incapable of availing thyself of thy vast strength, thou hast to abandon a life of stillness and to obey the law which God and time gave to procreative nature. A luminous body will appear more brilliant in proportion as it is surrounded by deeper shadow. First study the science, and then practice the art which is born of that science. You don't get into trouble because of the things you don't know. It is the things you don't know that really get you into a mess. If a man has a tent made of linen of which the apertures have all been stopped up, and be it 12 brachia across, over 25 feet, and 12 in depth, he will be able to throw himself down from any height without sustaining injury. His concept of the parachute. A clever man without wisdom is like a beautiful flower without fragrance. When counting, try not to mix chickens with blessings. Man and the animals are merely a passage and channel for food, a tomb for other animals, a haven for the dead, giving life by the death of others, a coffer full of corruption. O time, swift robber of all created things, how many kings, how many nations hast thou undone, and how many changes of states and of various events have happened since the wondrous forms of this fish perished here in this cavernous and winding recess. Now destroyed by time, thou liest patiently in this confined space with bones stripped and bare, serving as a support and prop for the superimposed mountain. The moment has no time. Why are the bones of great fishes, and oysters and corals and various other shells and sea snails, found on the high tops of mountains that border the sea, in the same way in which they are found in the depths of the sea? I am still hopeful. A falcon, time. But the coincidence is probably accidental. He who does not understand the supreme certainty of mathematics is wallowing in confusion. O time! Swift devourer of all created things! Avoid the precepts of those thinkers whose reasoning is not confirmed by experience. Truth was the only daughter of time. O time! Consumer of all things, O envious age! Thou dost destroy all things and devour all things with the relentless teeth of years, little by little in a slow death. Helen, when she looked in her mirror, seeing the withered wrinkles made in her face by old age, wept and wondered why she had twice been carried away. When you draw a nude, sketch the whole figure and nicely fit the members to it and to each other. Even though you may only finish one portion of the drawing, just make certain that all the parts hang together, so that the study will be useful to you in the future. We are deceived by promises and time disappoints us. Knowledge shall always bear witness like a clarion to its creator. I love this sight. It was lovingly hand-shaped it. Your soul transformed this into this art. It was perfect. I have tried to create another equal to it, but to no avail, so I will just have to paint the Sistine Chapel. Nature alone is the master of true genius. Patience serves as a protection against wrongs as clothes do against cold. The painter's mind is a copy of the divine mind, since it operates freely in creating the many kinds of animals, plants, fruits, landscapes, countrysides, ruins, and awe-inspiring places. Just as iron rusts from disuse, and stagnant water putrefies, or when cold turns to ice, so our intellect wastes unless it is kept in use. Not to anticipate is already to moan. The desire to know is natural to good men. Whoever in debate quotes authority uses not intellect, but memory. Experience never misleads. What you are misled by is only your judgment, and this misleads you by anticipating results from experience of a kind that is not produced by your experiments. He who never puts his trust in any man will never be deceived. Given the cause, nature produces the effect in the briefest manner that it can employ. To make a perfume, take some rose water and wash your hands in it, then take a lavender flower and rub it with your palms, and you will achieve the desired effect. Every action done by nature is done in the shortest way. Nature is constrained by the cause of her laws which dwell inborn in her. Variant, nature is constrained by the order of her own law which lives and works within her. Although human ingenuity may devise various inventions which, by the help of various instruments, answer to one and the same purpose, yet will it never discover any inventions more beautiful, more simple or more practical than those of nature, because in her inventions there is nothing lacking and nothing superfluous. And she makes use of no counterpoise when she constructs the limbs of animals in such a way as to correspond to the motion of their bodies, but she puts into them the soul of the body. It is an acknowledged fact that we perceive errors in the work of others more readily than in our own. My body is not a tomb for animals. Perspective is a most subtle discovery in mathematical studies, for by means of lines it causes to appear distant that which is near, and large that which is small. The water which rises in the mountain is the blood which keeps the mountain in life. If you call painting dumb poetry, the painter may call poetry blind painting. The eye, the window of the soul, is the chief means whereby the understanding can most fully and abundantly appreciate the infinite works of nature, and the ear is second. I roamed the countryside searching for the answers to things I did not understand. Why shells existed on the tops of mountains along with the imprints of coral and plant and seaweed usually found in the sea. Why the thunder lasts a longer time than that which causes it, and why immediately on its creation the lightning becomes visible to the eye while thunder requires time to travel. How the various circles of water form around a spot which has been struck by a stone, and why a bird sustains itself in the air. These questions and other strange phenomena engaged my thought throughout my life. Oh! Speculators on things, boast not of knowing the things that nature ordinarily brings about, but rejoice if you know the end of those things which you yourself devise. The art of procreation and the members employed therein are so repulsive, that if it were not for the beauty of the faces and the adornments of the actors and the pent-up impulse, nature would lose the human species. One painter ought never to imitate the manner of any other, because in that case he cannot be called the child of nature, but the grandchild. It is always best to have recourse to nature, which is replete with such abundance of objects, than to the productions of other masters, who learnt everything from her. How painting surpasses all human works by reason of the subtle possibilities which it contains. It is a far worthier thing to read by the light of experience than to adorn oneself with the labors of others. Necessity is the mistress and guide of nature. After painting comes sculpture, a very noble art, but one that does not in the execution require the same supreme ingenuity as the art of painting, since in two most important and difficult particulars, in foreshortening and in light and shade, for which the painter has to invent a process, sculpture is helped by nature. Moreover, sculpture does not imitate color, which the painter takes pains to attune so that the shadows accompany the lights. Experience, the interpreter between creative nature and the human race, teaches the action of nature among mortals, how under the constraint of necessity she cannot act otherwise than as reason, who steers her helm, teaches her to act. Among the great things which are to be found among us, the being of nothingness is the greatest. There shall be wings. If the accomplishment be not for me, 'tis for some other. The spirit cannot die, and man, who shall know all and shall have wings. In fact, whatever exists in the universe, in essence, in appearance, in the imagination, the painter has first in his mind and then in his hands. It lies in his power to create them. Lust is the cause of generation, appetite is the support of life, fear or timidity is the prolongation of life, and fraud the preservation of its instruments. O neglectful nature, wherefore art thou thus partial, becoming to some of thy children a tender and benignant mother, to others a most cruel and ruthless stepmother? I see thy children given into slavery to others without ever receiving any benefit, and in lieu of any reward for the services they have done for them they are repaid by the severest punishments. A day will come in which men will look upon an animal's murder the same way they look today upon a man's murder. That which can be lost cannot be deemed riches. Nothing is more apt to deceive us than our own judgment of our work. We derive more benefit from having our faults pointed out by our enemies than from hearing the opinions of friends. This work should commence with the conception of man, and should describe the nature of the womb, and how the child inhabits it, and in what stage it dwells there, and the manner of its quickening and feeding, and its growth, and what interval there is between one stage of growth and another, and what thing drives it forth from the body of the mother, and for what reason it sometimes emerges from the belly of its mother before the due time. A bird maintains itself in the air by imperceptible balancing, when near to the mountains or lofty ocean crags. It does this by means of the curves of the winds which as they strike against these projections, being forced to preserve their first impetus bend their straight course towards the sky with divers revolutions, at the beginning of which the birds come to a stop with their wings open, receiving underneath themselves the continual buffetings of the reflex courses of the winds. Good culture is born of a good disposition, and since the cause is more to be praised than the effect, I will rather praise a good disposition without culture, than good culture without the disposition. The earth is moved from its position by the weight of a tiny bird resting upon it. The Medici made me and the Medici destroyed me. One's thoughts turn towards hope. All our knowledge originates in opinion. The faculty of imagination is both the rudder and the bridle of the senses. It is no small benefit on finding oneself in bed in the dark to go over again in the imagination the main lines of the forms previously studied, or other noteworthy things conceived by ingenious speculation. Love, fear, and esteem, write these on 3 stones. The lover is moved by the beloved object as the senses are by sensual objects, and they unite and become one and the same thing. The work is the first thing born of this union. If the thing loved is base, the lover becomes base. The eye encompasses the beauty of the whole world. A bird is an instrument working according to mathematical law, which instrument it is within the capacity of man to reproduce with all its movements. The lie is so vile, that even if it were in speaking well of godly things, it would take off something from God's grace, and truth is so excellent, that if it praises but small things they become noble. Avoid studies of which the result dies with the worker. You grow in reputation like bread in the hands of a child. Patience serves us against insults precisely as clothes do against the cold. For if you multiply your garments as the cold increases, that cold cannot hurt you. In the same way increase your patience under great offenses, and they cannot hurt your feelings. When you are alone you are all your own. When that which loves is united to the thing beloved it can rest there. When the burden is laid down it finds rest there. There will be eternal fame also for the inhabitants of that town, constructed and enlarged by him. The body of the earth is of the nature of a fish, because it draws water as its breath instead of air. The merit of painting lies in the exactness of reproduction. Painting is a science and all sciences are based on mathematics. No human inquiry can be a science unless it pursues its path through mathematical exposition and demonstration. Very great charm of shadow and light is to be found in the faces of those who sit in the doors of dark houses. The eye of the spectator sees that part of the face which is in shadow lost in the darkness of the house, and that part of the face which is lit draws its brilliancy from the splendor of the sky. From this intensification of light and shade the face gains greatly in relief and beauty by showing the subtlest shadows in the light part and the subtlest lights in the dark part. An arch consists of two weaknesses which, leaning one against the other, make a strength. There are many kinds of beauty as people who possess it. When you are painting you should take a flat mirror and often look at your work within it, and it will then be seen in reverse, and will appear to be by the hand of some other master, and you will be better able to judge of its faults than in any other way. Threats alone are the weapons of the threatened man. Those who are inspired by a model other than nature, labor in vain. Happy will they be who lend ear to the words of the dead. When taking a selfie, remember the most natural pose is still best. Nothing is hidden under the sun. We know more about the movement of celestial bodies than about the soil underfoot. The eye is the window of the human body through which it feels its way and enjoys the beauty of the world. Medicine is the restoration of discordant elements. Here is a thing which the more it is needed the more it is rejected, and this is advice, which is unwillingly heeded by those who most need it, that is to say, by the ignorant. Ask advice of him who governs himself well. A single and distinct luminous body causes stronger relief in the objects than a diffused light, as may be seen by comparing one side of a landscape illuminated by the sun, and one overshadowed by clouds, and illuminated only by the diffused light of the atmosphere. Now do you not see that the eye embraces the beauty of the whole world? It counsels and corrects all the arts of mankind, it is the prince of mathematics, and the sciences founded on it are absolutely certain. It has measured the distances and sizes of the stars, it has discovered the elements and their location. It has given birth to architecture and to perspective and to the divine art of painting. Who would believe that so small a space could contain the images of all the universe? The lover is moved by the thing loved, as the sense is by that which perceives, and it unites with it and they become one and the same thing. When the lover is united with the beloved it finds rest there, when the burden is laid down there it finds rest. Those who condemn the supreme certainty of mathematics feed on confusion, and can never silence the contradictions of the sophistical sciences which lead to eternal quackery. The light and heat of the universe comes from the sun, and its cold and darkness from the withdrawal of the sun. Inequality is the cause of all local movements. The first of all single colors is white. We shall set down white for the representative of light, without which no color can be seen, yellow for the earth, green for water, blue for air, red for fire, and black for total darkness. We might say that the earth has the spirit of growth, that its flesh is the soil. Demetrius was wont to say that there was no difference between the words and speech of the unskilled and ignorant and the sounds and rumblings caused by the stomach being full of superfluous wind. This he said, not without reason, for, as he held, it did not in the least matter from what part of them the voice emanated, whether from the lower parts or the mouth, since the one and the other were of equal worth and importance. All objects transmit their image to the eye in pyramids, and the nearer to the eye these pyramids are intersected the smaller will the image appear of the objects which cause them. In the days of thy youth seek to obtain that which shall compensate the losses of thy old age. For in truth great love is born of great knowledge of the thing loved. You will never have a greater or lesser dominion than that over yourself. I roamed the countryside searching for answers to things I did not understand. Why shells existed on the tops of mountains. How the various circles of water form around the spot which has been struck by a stone, and why a bird sustains itself in the air. Let proportion be found not only in numbers and measures, but also in sounds, weights, times, and positions, and whatever force there is. Truth was always but the daughter of time. I have solved what color is, however, I still have no idea about what line is. The men of experiment are like the ant, they only collect and use. But the bee gathers its materials from the flowers of the garden and of the field, but transforms and digests it by a power of its own. Fix your course on a star and you'll navigate any storm. Music, is the shaping of the invisible. Every obstacle is destroyed through rigor. Make yourself a master of perspective, then acquire perfect knowledge of the proportions of men and other animals. Thirst will parch your tongue and your body will waste through lack of sleep ere you can describe in words that which painting instantly sets before the eye. Envy wounds with false accusations, that is with detraction, a thing which scares virtue. O painter skilled in anatomy, beware lest the undue prominence of the bones, sinews and muscles cause you to become a wooden painter from the desire to make your nude figures reveal all. Just as a well-filled day brings blessed sleep, so a well-employed life brings a blessed death. Never make head straight on the shoulders, but turn them aside to the right or to the left, even though they look down, or upward, or straight ahead, because it is necessary for them to look lively and awake and not asleep. And do not depict the front or rear half of the whole person so that too much straightness is displaced, one half above or below the other half. And if you should wish to use stiff figures, do so only in portraying old people. I say that the power of vision extends through the visual rays to the surface of non-transparent bodies, while the power possessed by these bodies extends to the power of vision. O admirable necessity! O powerful action! What mind can penetrate your nature? What language can express this marvel? None, to be sure. This is where human discourse turns toward the contemplation of the divine. Darkness is absence of light. Shadow is diminution of light. The most beautiful words of love are told in silence for a look. When you look at a wall spotted with stains, you may discover a resemblance to various landscapes, beautiful with mountains, rivers, rocks, trees. Or again, you may see battles and figures in action, or strange faces and costumes, and an endless variety of objects which you could reduce to complete and well-drawn figures. Learning acquired in youth arrests the evil of old age, and if you understand that old age has wisdom for its food, you will so conduct yourself in youth that your old age will not lack for nourishment. To speak well of a base man is much the same as speaking ill of a good man. The cat is nature's masterpiece. The eye transmits its own image through the air to all the objects which face it, and also receives them on its own surface, whence the sensus communis takes them and considers them. To discover the soul living in somebody's body, we watch the surrounding of the body, and if it's messy and disordered, so is the soul. Where there is most feeling, there is the greatest martyrdom. The discovery of a good wine is increasingly better for mankind than the discovery of a new star. In time and with water, everything changes. A well-spent day brings happy sleep. Life well spent is long. The smallest feline is a masterpiece. I have wasted my hours. Just as iron rusts from disuse, even so does inaction spoil the intellect. I love those who can smile in trouble. God sells us all things at the price of labor. Principles for the development of a complete mind. Study the science of art. Study the art of science. Develop your senses, especially learn how to see. Realize that everything connects to everything else. He who thinks little errs much. He who possesses most must be most afraid of loss. Men wrongly lament the flight of time, blaming it for being too swift. They do not perceive that its passage is sufficiently long, but a good memory, which nature has given to us, causes things long past to seem present. Who sows virtue reaps honor. Just as eating against one's will is injurious to health, so studying without a liking for it spoils the memory, and it retains nothing it takes in. Intellectual passion drives out sensuality. The supreme misfortune is when theory outstrips performance. Simplicity is the best sophistication. The color of the object illuminated partakes of the color of that which illuminates it. What is fair in men, passes away, but not so in art. And you who wish to represent by words the form of man, all the aspects of his membrification, relinquish that idea. For the more minutely you describe, the more you will confine the mind of the reader, and the more you will keep him from the knowledge of the thing described. And so it is necessary to draw and to describe. Truth at last cannot be hidden. Dissimulation is of no avail. Dissimulation is to no purpose before so great a judge. Falsehood puts on a mask. Nothing is hidden under the sun. Art is the queen of all sciences, communicating knowledge to all the generations of the world. Feathers shall raise men even as they do birds towards heaven, that is by letters written with their quills. He who cannot establish dominion over himself will have no dominion over others. Art lives from constraints and dies from freedom. Small rooms or dwellings discipline the mind, large ones weaken it. You should prefer a good scientist without literary abilities than a literate one without scientific skills. To such an extent does nature delight and abound in variety that among her trees there is not one plant to be found which is exactly like another, and not only among the plants, but among the boughs, the leaves, and the fruits, you will not find one which is exactly similar to another. Do not reveal, if liberty is precious to you, my face is the prison of love. Drawing is based upon perspective, which is nothing else than a thorough knowledge of the function of the eye. Intellectual passion dries out sensuality. I have discovered that a screw-shaped device such as this, if it is well made from starched linen, will rise in the air if turned quickly. Mechanics is the paradise of the mathematical sciences because by means of it one comes to the fruits of mathematics. I roamed the countryside searching for answers to things I did not understand. One day the world will look upon research upon animals as it now looks upon research on human beings. Nature varies the seed according to the variety of the things she desires to produce in the world. The days are long enough for those who use them. Small rooms and dwellings set the mind on the right path, large ones cause it to go astray. Therefore, O students, study mathematics and do not build without foundations. You should often amuse yourself when you take a walk for recreation, in watching and taking note of the attitudes and actions of men as they talk and dispute, or laugh or come to blows with one another, noting these down with rapid strokes, in a little pocketbook which you ought always to carry with you. That painter who has no doubts will achieve little. Of the original phenomena, light is the most enthralling. Obstacles cannot bend me. Every obstacle yields to effort. A diamond is just a lump of coal that's stuck to its job. In life beauty perishes, but not in art. He who draws, ought to take his position so that the eye of the figure he is drawing is on a level with his own, because, generally, figures or people whom you meet in the streets all have their eyes at the same level as yours, and if you make them higher or lower you will find that your portrait will not resemble them. Just as iron which is not used grows rusty, and water putrefies and freezes in the cold, so the mind of which no use is made is spoilt. An artist's studio should be a small space because small rooms discipline the mind and large ones distract it. I wish to work miracles. There are three aspects to perspective. The first has to do with how the size of objects seems to diminish according to distance. The second, the manner in which colors change the farther away they are from the eye. The third defines how objects ought to be finished less carefully the farther away they are. Experience is a truer guide than the words of others. Every obstacle yields to stern resolve. Look at light and admire its beauty. Close your eyes, and then look again. What you saw is no longer there, and what you will see later is not yet. Even the richest soil, if left uncultivated, will produce the rankest weeds. For those colors which you wish to be beautiful, always first prepare a pure white ground. It is useful to constantly observe, note, and consider. He turns not back who is bound to a star. All sciences are vain and full of errors that are not born of experience, the mother of all knowledge. The young man should first learn perspective, then the proportions of objects. Next, copy work after the hand of a good master, to gain the habit of drawing parts of the body well, and then to work from nature, to confirm the lessons learned. He who walks straight rarely falls. As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so life well used brings happy death. I have from an early age abjured the use of meat, and the time will come when men such as I will look upon the murder of animals as they now look upon the murder of men. Study without desire spoils the memory, and it retains nothing that it takes in. Nature is full of infinite causes that have never occurred in experience. He who does not oppose evil, commands it to be done. Not to punish evil is equivalent to authorizing it. Having wandered some distance among gloomy rocks, I came to the entrance of a great cavern. Two contrary emotions arose in me, fear and desire: fear of the threatening dark cavern, desire to see whether there were any marvelous things in it. Men born in hot countries love the night because it refreshes them, and have a horror of light because it burns them. He who truly knows has no occasion to shout. Men of genius sometimes accomplish most when they work least, for they are thinking out inventions. Whoever does not respect life, does not deserve it. My body will not be a tomb for other creatures. Wisdom is the daughter of experience. Those who are in love with practice without knowledge are like the sailor who gets into a ship without rudder or compass and who never can be certain whether he is going. Practice must always be founded on sound theory, and to this perspective is the guide and the gateway, and without this nothing can be done well in the matter of drawing. While you are alone you are entirely your own master, and if you have one companion you are but half your own, and the less so in proportion to the indiscretion of his behavior. It is ill to praise, and worse to blame, the thing which you do not understand. Savage is he who saves himself. Truly man is the king of beasts, for his brutality exceeds them. We live by the death of others. We are burial places. Motion is created by the destruction of balance. It is the infinite alone that cannot be attained, for if it could it would become finite. If on your own or by the criticism of others you discover error in your work, correct it then and there, otherwise in exposing your work to the public, you will expose your error also. There is nothing that deceives us more than our own judgment when used to give an opinion on our own works. It is sound in judging the work of our enemies but not that of our friends, for hate and love are two of the most powerfully motivating factors found among living things. I am not poor. Poor are those who desire many things. It is ordained that to the ambitious, who derive no satisfaction from the gifts of life and the beauty of the world, life shall be a cause of suffering, and they shall possess neither the profit nor the beauty of the world. The painter will produce pictures of little merit if he takes the works of others as his standard. Painting is poetry that is seen rather than felt, and poetry is painting that is felt rather than seen. Love shows itself more in adversity than in prosperity, as light does, which shines most where the place is darkest. There is nothing which deceives us as much as our own judgment. O Lord, Thou givest us everything, at the price of an effort. Reprove your friend in secret and praise him openly. No human investigation can be called real science if it cannot be demonstrated mathematically. There is no result in nature without a cause. Understand the cause and you will have no need of the experiment. All our knowledge is the offspring of our perceptions. Nature never breaks her own laws. The deeper the feeling, the greater the pain. Inaction saps the vigor of the mind. You must grow in patience when you meet with great wrongs, and they will then be powerless to vex your mind. The worst evil which can befall the artist is that his work should appear good in his own eyes. He who in reasoning cites authority is making use of his memory rather than of his intellect. The knowledge of all things is possible. King of the animals, as thou hast described him, should rather say King of the beasts, thou being the greatest because thou doest only help them, in order that they give thee their children for the benefit of the gullet, of which thou hast attempted to make a sepulchre for all animals, and I would say still more. If I were allowed to speak the entire truth, now does not nature produce enough simple, vegetarian, food for thee to satisfy thyself? He who can copy can do. Good writing comes from good talent. Oysters open completely when the moon is full, and when the crab sees one it throws a piece of stone or seaweed into it and the oyster cannot close again so that it serves the crab for meat. Such is the fate of him who opens his mouth too much and thereby puts himself at the mercy of the listener. A good painter has two main objects to paint, man and the intention of his soul. The former is easy, the latter hard, as he has to represent it by the attitude and movement of the limbs. A good painter is to paint two main things, men and the working of man's mind. Nothing can be loved or hated unless it is first understood. Life without love is no life at all. Beauty perishes in life, but is immortal in art. The painter has the universe in his mind and hands. A painter should begin every canvas with a wash of black, because all things in nature are dark except where exposed by the light. Art is never finished, only abandoned. Vitality and beauty are gifts of nature for those who live according to its laws. We might say that the earth has a spirit of growth, that its flesh is the soil, its bones the arrangement and connection of the rocks of which the mountains are composed, its cartilage the tufa, and its blood the springs of water. Be a mirror, absorb everything around you and still remain the same. The greatest geniuses sometimes accomplish more when they work less. Patience serves as a protection against wrongs as clothes do against cold. For if you put on more clothes as the cold increases, it will have no power to hurt you. So in like manner you must grow in patience when you meet with great wrongs, and they will then be powerless to vex your mind. Learn diligence before speedy execution. If you are alone you belong entirely to yourself. If you are accompanied by even one companion you belong only half to yourself or even less in proportion to the thoughtlessness of his conduct, and if you have more than one companion you will fall more deeply into the same plight. Poor is the man who desires a lot. If you put on more garments, the cold cannot reach you. Similarly, increase your patience and concentration and even great injuries cannot vex your mind. The five senses are the ministers of the soul. Make your work to be in keeping with your purpose. I awoke, only to see that the rest of the world is still asleep. Obstacles cannot crush me. Every obstacle yields to stern resolve. He who is fixed to a star does not change his mind. If you cause your ship to stop and place the head of a long tube in the water and place the outer extremity to your ear, you will hear ships at a great distance from you. When you put your hand in a flowing stream, you touch the last that has gone before and the first of what is still to come. True and great love springs out of great knowledge, and where you know little you can love but little or not at all. A deaf and dumb person who sees two men in conversation may nevertheless understand from the attitudes and gestures of the speakers how well their discussion is getting along. One can have no smaller or greater mastery than mastery of oneself. Learning is the only thing that never disappoints us. People reveal themselves completely only when they are thrown out of the customary conditions of their life. Details make perfection, and perfection is not a detail. Every now and then go away, have a little relaxation, for when you come back to your work your judgment will be sure. Go some distance away because then the work appears smaller and more of it can be taken in at a glance and a lack of harmony and proportion is more readily seen. One has no right to love or hate anything if one has not acquired a thorough knowledge of its nature. Great love springs from great knowledge of the beloved object, and if you know it but little you will be able to love it only a little or not at all. Those who are enamored of practice without science are like a pilot who goes into a ship without rudder or compass and never has any certainty of where he is going. Practice should always be based upon a sound knowledge of theory. There are many occasions when the muscles that form the lips of the mouth move the lateral muscles that are joined to them. And there are an equal number of occasions when these lateral muscles move the lips of this mouth, replacing it where it cannot return of itself, because the function of muscle is to pull and not to push except in the case of the genitals and the tongue. Realize that everything connects to everything else. Average human looks without seeing, listens without hearing, touches without feeling, eats without tasting, moves without physical awareness, inhales without awareness of odor or fragrance, and talks without thinking. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Being willing is not enough. We must do. You will never have a greater or lesser dominion than that over yourself. The height of a man's success is gauged by his self-mastery, the depth of his failure by his self-abandonment. And this law is the expression of eternal justice. He who cannot establish dominion over himself will have no dominion over others. Whatever you do in life, if you want to be creative and intelligent, and develop your brain, you must do everything with the awareness that everything, in some way, connects to everything else. If you find from your own experience that something is a fact and it contradicts what some authority has written down, then you must abandon the authority and base your reasoning on your own findings. Life is pretty simple. You do some stuff. Most fails. Some works. You do more of what works. Learning is the only thing the mind never exhausts, never fears, and never regrets.